Jen, thank you very much indeed. So, as we've just been hearing, Jack Sargent has been sworn in as Wales's newest Assembly member, having won the by-election in Alyn and Deeside. The seat held, of course, by his late father, the former Cabinet Secretary, Carl Sargent.
Well, it's been a difficult campaign for Labour, exposing tensions within the party, tensions which meant the leader of the party in Wales, the First Minister, Alyn Jones, didn't visit the area at all during the campaign. Paul Martin spent yesterday in Connah's Quay.
It's a bleak midwinter morning on Deeside, with snow in the air. Not ordinary election weather, but it's the day of an extraordinary by-election. It's now 3 months since the AM for this safe Labour seat, Carl Sargent, died. An apparent suicide, days after being sacked from government and suspended by Labour following allegations about his personal conduct, claims he denied. Polling stations have just opened. Today, voters here could make Carl Sargent's son Jack, just 23 years old, the youngest ever Assembly member, as his dad's successor. Why did you vote for Jack today?
Because it's a good family and they're all from the Quay, and his dad did good work, so why should he be any different?
Jack is only 23.
Yes, but young people have great ideas and they can go forward, you know. I always believe in new blood, new ideas.
Young blood, innit?
Yeah, do you see it as a positive?
Yeah, and get that old bugger out.
Alyn Jones, if he can cope with him, you know, he's going to be a strong lad, but whether he will or not, I don't know.
These seem to be Labour votes for Jack Sargent, yet against Alyn Jones. It's lunchtime at Connah's Quay Labour Club, a place that became a focal point for friends of Carl Sargent after his death. Today, it's the engine room of Labour's Election Day operation, with activists refuelling before the final push. This is traditionally a low turnout area in the Assembly election. It's cold today, it was snowing this morning. Is that worrying you?
Well, I mean, obviously, you're right, it has been a low turnout. I think it was 35% last time. It's a by-election. The weather is a bit cold, so it's very important that we go out and really knock on as many doors as we can and speak to as many people as we can.
And driving around Connah's Quay, there aren't many signs there's a by-election on. This is one of the bigger housing estates in Connah's Quay, and we've spotted a team of Labour activists knocking doors trying to get the vote out, including a familiar face. Former Welsh Labour Government Minister Leighton Andrews has been one of the highest profile critics of the First Minister Alyn Jones, and unlike every other Labour cabinet member, Mr Jones hasn't been to Alyn and Deeside at all during this campaign.
I think there's still a lot of anger on the doorstep. You get that very often. People will say to you that they are distressed by what happened to Carl. And the First Minister would have been a very divisive figure if he'd come to this campaign. I think the campaign and all the circumstances surrounding it inevitably raise questions about the leadership of Welsh Labour in the National Assembly.
As the polls close, local members, friends and relatives of Jack Sargent began to relax, nearly ready to celebrate.
I've known Jack since we were in high school. Jack's been a fantastic candidate so far. He's determined to deliver for the people of Alyn and Deeside. He's compassionate, committed.
I think he's grown up so much since the Jack that I very first met, and to take on such a huge role and be able to deal with it the way he has, kind of going into a whole new phase of his life, I think has been absolutely amazing.
At the count, Jack Sargent was supported by his family and senior Welsh Labour figures. Some tried to play down the tension in the party and the implications for Alyn Jones.
Sargent's Jack, Welsh Labour.
Llafur Cymru.
11267 votes.
I want to say a big thank you to every single person standing in this room tonight, everyone who stood by my family during the toughest time of our lives. I really can't bring together the words to say thank you enough, but it just means so much to me. There are questions still to be answered surrounding why we're standing for this by-election, and there are inquiries underway. But Tonight is not the night for those questions to be answered. That will be done in due course. Tonight's about celebrating a victory on behalf of the people of Alyn and Deeside.
It's a big Labour win in a safe Labour seat, but a Labour win like no other. One that has the potential to destabilise its leader in Wales rather than strengthen him.
Paul Martin, well, joining us now to discuss the result are Ken Skates, who led the Labour campaign in Alyn and Deeside. He's also Cabinet Secretary for Economy. And also with us, Professor Roger Owen-Scully from Cardiff University. Thank you both very much for coming in. Extraordinary circumstances for a by-election, a victory for Jack Sargent, but can this be seen as a victory for Carwyn Jones, Ken Skates?
This is a huge victory, not just for Jack, but for the whole Labour movement. It was a stunning campaign. An incredible result, one of the biggest majorities that we've seen in modern times in Alyn and Deeside, on a turnout of only 29%. And so I think what we've had is a great campaign, great team effort, but most of all, we've had a magnificent candidate. And I think everybody in the Welsh Labour family can be proud of that.
But a victory despite Carwyn Jones, he didn't even visit. And when a leader of a party can't visit a part of Wales, what does that say about his credibility and his leadership?
Look, I think your programme highlighted the tensions that there were. I'm not going to deny that there have been tensions, but the fact of the matter is that Jack won. Jack won as a consequence of 20,000 people.
On the doorstep?
There were concerns at times, yes, absolutely. But equally, I have never, ever experienced a campaign where there is such a warmth in the response that you get from people on the doorstep. People were firmly behind Jack. They were firmly behind Jack as the Labour candidate. And the result, based on a turnout of 29%, I think is stunning. He's increased the share of the vote by 14%.
But from what Paul Martin felt on the streets, that this was perhaps a vote for Jack Sargent but against Carwyn Jones. Would you deny that, or is that a fair analysis?
My reading of, especially on the 6th of February, my reading of the vote was that this was a huge endorsement of Jack. Of course, there were other concerns expressed on the doorstep. There were concerns expressed about the job that I'm doing in terms of roads in North Wales at times. But above all, there was a really positive embrace of Jack as the candidate and of Jack as the Labour candidate.
Roger, if we can just bring you in here. Very good evening to you. What's your assessment of what have been a pretty extraordinary couple of weeks?
Extraordinary 3 months in many respects. And I think one thing that comes out very clearly from Paul Martin's report there is that, leaving the party politics aside, everyone watching this show, I'd think, will have experienced the pain of losing a loved one, but very few in as distressing and public circumstances as Jack Sargent did. And I think people right across Wales of all parties and of none should admire the maturity and the dignity with which he has behaved in these astonishingly difficult times.
Do you share those sentiments, Mr. Skates?
Oh, absolutely. I've known Jack since he was a toddler, and he's grown immensely in stature, in confidence. What struck me above all, though, is his maturity now. And he's always possessed great emotional intelligence and ability to connect with people. I think he's going to bring great value to the National Assembly. I think crucially as well, he's part of the first generation that's fully digital. He grew up in a digital age. He's only 5 years beyond being an 18-year-old, so he knows exactly what it is that young people face in terms of the day-to-day challenges. And I think that's going to bring something new and additional to the National Assembly. He's going to have an incredible reception there next week across the Labour group and opposition parties as well.
How should the First Minister handle this? Because as you've admitted, there are clearly tensions. It's going to be extremely difficult. He's going to be there in the chamber on a daily basis. How can the wounds be healed in the party?
Well, as Jack identified last night, there are inquiries that will examine all of the questions that are being asked. Those inquiries will report. In the meantime, we've got a strong Labour group. Jack will be welcomed with open arms by the group, but I know as well that everybody in that chamber, across all opposition parties as well, will have Jack's long-term best interests in their heart, and he is going to be given a huge welcome next week.
Roger, I mean, you've written in the New Statesman today about the future of the First Minister. How do you read that? Because that is the question now, surely, isn't it, going forward in terms of the leadership of the party?
Yes, I mean, this was in many respects an extraordinary by-election, even though it had an utterly predictable result. Labour held a safe Labour seat. Extraordinary, not just because we had, the circumstances which led to the by-election, the youngest ever Assembly member elected, but most of all, we had the leader of the party defending the seat, the First Minister of Wales, the man who was front and centre of the Labour Party's general election campaign last year when Labour looked to be up against it and actually came out of the election gaining seats, not even able to show up. And I think that speaks volumes for the divisions within the Labour Party, which Ken Skates is perhaps a little bit too discreet and skilled a politician to talk about so much. But I think those were very visible in the Assembly just last week when there was an extremely heated exchange between Carwyn Jones and Adam Price of Plaid Cymru. When things got heated, when things were difficult, you'd expect the Labour members to be vocally backing up their leader. Instead, sitting there with their computer terminals, it seemed like a lot of Labour AMs suddenly had very important emails to attend to.
Are you all behind the First Minister and absolutely endorsing him?
Look, I can tell you there is no movement against him. There is no movement. And I know that there is always speculation about who's going to be next, who's the next leader. There's nothing new in that. The moment that you're elected leader, you're watching over your shoulders to see who's coming through. I know that there'll be a lot of speculation, but the fact is Jack's going to be coming down next week. He's focused on delivery for the people of Alyn and Deeside. And insofar as jobs are concerned, the people who may have a job or who may not have a job in the future, what people were talking about on the doorstep were their own partners, their children, whether they're going to have jobs in industry.
With the greatest respect, Mr. Skates, I think many people watching and listening tonight will probably assume that you'd answer like that and say exactly what you've said, that the First Minister indeed has your support. However, the man next to you might have a different view. Do you think that Carwyn Jones will still be First Minister in the summer, for example?
Maybe not all of the summer. We're in an extraordinary time in many respects in politics in Wales at the moment. Frankly, the only politics that matter in Wales at the moment are the politics going on within the Labour Party, partly because, to be quite blunt about it, all of the opposition parties in the Assembly are utterly useless or in a shambles. And we have, because of the events of November last year, these really deep divisions within the Labour Party. And unless all of these inquiries come out completely clearing the First Minister, it seems very difficult to see how he can regain the position, the authority that he once had.
The summer, you're saying, tonight?
Exactly when it happens is difficult to predict. I suspect it will depend a lot on what exactly these inquiries report back as saying. But it seems very difficult to think that Carwyn Jones
Ken Skates, that's not long. That's a few months.
It's not long. I mean, look, the inquiries are going to be ongoing for at least 4 months, I believe. We're focused on delivery. We really are. There's a huge weight of responsibility.
The First Minister to remain in post. Do you, Ken Skates, want?
Of course, we've got the inquiries, and Jack said the same. We've got the inquiries that are taking place to answer all of those questions.
He's the right man to take the party forward in the long term.
Well, this is for the First Minister to decide in the long term, but the inquiries are there to answer all those questions. I think it's essential that the people that are carrying out those inquiries are given the time and the opportunity to do the work that needs to be done.
Thank you ever so much, both of you, for coming in tonight. Ken Skates and Roger Scully. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.